Good afternoon. Good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for joining us here on Nationwide at 5. It's time for the cover story. I'm Ricardo Brooks.
And I'm Siobhan Campbell.
How you do?
Doing quite well.
Good, good. Our focus this afternoon, education. The minister, the portfolio minister, Dr. Dana Morris-Dixon, she says the ministry has deployed multiple initiatives aimed at improving the literacy rate of primary and secondary students island-wide. Now, she was reacting to a report in the Gleaner that 70% of first-form students at Pembroke Hall High School are either unable to read or can only do so at a third grade level. The principal, Reverend Claude Ellis, said that many of the students are struggling to recognize even letters of the alphabet.
It's always sad when you see those reports, and it is the reason why we are focused on literacy. And you would have heard me announce that come September, from grade 1 to grade 3, we are timetabling reading. It had been taken off of the timetable some time ago, and we are putting it back on the timetable because we cannot afford for our children to leave primary school not literate. We've put in some new programs. We call it the tactical approach, where we're focused on literacy in those schools that are challenged. And so our reading specialists are working with them. We're doing more interventions, and come September, for all of those schools, the children will now get breakfast.
That's Senator Dr. Dana Morris-Dixon. She's the Minister of Education and Youth. She was speaking during Wednesday's post-cabinet media briefing, and she says primary schools need to cooperate with the ministry's efforts to improve the country's literacy rate. Dr. Morris-Dixon also says the Education Ministry is working on improving the detection and treatment of students with learning disorders. Joining us now to discuss this further is the principal of Pembroke Hall High School, Reverend Claude Ellis, and we're expected
to be joined by the Director of Region 1 in the Education Ministry, Otis Brown. Good afternoon, Reverend Ellis.
Good afternoon, sir.
Thank you so much for joining us. Let me start by asking, this present cohort of grade 7 students, this problem of 70% not being able to read, is this unique to this cohort, or this is a problem the school has faced over time?
All right, so one of the first things that I want to for what it's worth, correct. I noted the article did say many of the students were unable to identify letters. What I did say was that there were some. Many would make it seem as a majority, but it is some that were unable to. We noted that particularly after the COVID pandemic, the students that we were getting were performing lower than expected. And so, to be honest, the data that we are using is really data from last year's cohort, grade 7, and this year cohort for grade 7.
Okay. And over that time, you said since COVID, you're recognizing a dip in terms of, their abilities. What are some of the strategies you've been able to put in place, understanding that you're now facing this challenge?
Well, when we saw that many of our students were operating at a lower level, we decided that we would limit the number of subjects that the grade 7 cohort would have. And so they started doing 6 subjects rather than the normal 15 subjects. And we focused the time that we took from the other subjects on literacy and numeracy, right? So that is something that we did. We had pullouts, we had smaller groups, and we even implemented last year a mandatory summer school for our grade 7 students who we found were not reading at the level that they would have been should be reading rather. And right throughout this time, we were doing the post-test to see what levels they were beginning to move and so on. So those are some of the strategies that we immediately implemented that would have been from the last school year running into this school year.
But if I can just follow up, someone, if they come to you reading at a third grade level, and let's say the strategies that you've implemented, for example, limiting the amount of subjects that they carry in grade 7, how far can you move them along over that single academic year before they have to be passed on to second form?
But the truth of the matter is, our goal, a win is a win. And if we're able to move you from grade 3 to grade 6 in one academic year, that's a win. And so our concern is not necessarily to have them move to grade 7 within that 1 year, because that would be near impossible for some of the students, dependent on the other issues, on the underlying issues that they may be having. And so our main concern is to move you. And so some students have moved 2 places, some have moved 3, some have moved 1 place, and we celebrate those wins because a win is a win. Our goal is for them ultimately to be functional, literate, and numerate. But we know that this is something that will take time. And so the program is not just something that we are looking at the grade 7 level. We recognize that we'll have to adjust our grade 8, we'll have to adjust grade 9, but that is something that we will have to do if we're going to meet the needs of these students, right? Everyone is different. And so it cannot be that we have one size hoping that it will fit everyone.
Mm-hmm. But Reverend Ellis, going forward, as you said, you rightfully will have to make adjustments up and to, I assume, their final years in high school. How do you then justify that for those who would just simply be learning at a normal rate? Is it that they will be separated from that group which have these unfortunate challenges, or is it that they have to essentially go at the same pace?
No. Those students who are operating at what you are calling a normal pace are going to be doing the subjects that they would have been normally doing. Now, what we recognize, is that while we have some students who are functioning at one level, there are some students with exceptionality. At Pembroke Hall High School, we have students who are doing CSEC and CAPE at grade 9. These are exceptional students. And we have programs designed for those. So, as I said, it's not one size that fits all. It is designing the curriculum based on who you have and what are the needs of those students.
And do you have that flexibility in terms of resources, staff, administrative capacity to instill that flexibility?
The truth of the matter is that if I told you that I had the resources and staffing for that level of flexibility, I would be lying. But the truth of the matter is I can't sit down and say, boy, woe unto me. It is using what you have in the best way that you can. So last year when we decided to do the mandatory summer school, I know that if I ask the parents to pay for it, they would not have the money to pay for it. And some who do have will say they don't. So what did I do? We, as a senior management team, we met with our teachers and we explained to them what are the goals. And we said, okay, we can't pay you, but we're asking you for some time. And some teachers say, okay, I'll give you 3 weeks. Some say, I'll give you 2 weeks. Some say, I'll give you 1 week. And so while I was not able to pay the teachers, they were there and we were able to impact the students. So you use what you have to do what it is you are trying to get done. But yes, there is a need for more resources, human and capital resource. But we can't just sit and say, I'll wait until this happens. We have to use what it is we already have.
And we are discussing the situation at Pembroke Hall High School. According to a recent report, 70% of first form students, that's about 220 of the grade 7 cohort, they're not able to read at the required level. We have with us the principal of the school, Reverend Claude Ellis, taking us through how he has been trying, along with his senior management team, to rectify that situation as best they can. As I saw one of the YouTubers in the chat saying, the principal is turning him hand and make fashion. Reverend Ellis, Siobhan asked you about just the practical application of what you're called on to do. And I wondered, in terms of specialist teachers, because I imagine you'll need quite a bit of specialist teachers if you have 220 students reading so far below the required level. What's your deployment like in that area?
Okay, so just to correct something, right? We do have about 220 in the cohort, right? However, not all 220 are reading below their level. because we do have some students that are reading at grade 6, 7, 8, and 9, right? So we do have 220 in the cohort currently, but not all of those are reading below the level, right? So that's something. Now,
Okay.
as it relates,
Well, all right. So that's a correction of the article in the Clean. Okay.
yes. Now, as it relates to specialist teachers, the Ministry of Education, they have wonderfully given us 2 what we call pathway coaches, and these persons are trained in special education, right? And so these coaches work alongside a team of teachers. Now, there are teachers at Pembroke Hall High School that are trained in literacy that were not necessarily employed to do literacy. But we looked at everyone. We last year got a profile of every teacher in terms of qualifications and so on. And where we saw where a teacher was trained in literacy, they may not love doing literacy. They love to do regular language and so on. We have said to them, okay, we know this is what you'd like, but we are redeploying you and so on. So we do have some persons along with our pathway coaches that are working alongside. What we recognize also is that our teachers needed training because we put some of the subjects, we dropped some of the subjects like Spanish, industrial techniques, and so on. In order to use those time for literacy and numeracy, we had to have workshops where we train the teachers and into how you can do reading in your subject area and so on. So it really is not the perfect fix, but it was something that we thought we needed to do just to equip the teachers so that they were better able to manage in the classrooms. Because as you can imagine, when students are unable to read, there are a myriad of other behavioral problems.
Yes. I can imagine the frustration. Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, because as a matter of fact, a lot of the students are where we call at the frustration level. And so they will act up simply because they're not getting it.
Yeah.
And so we had to find ways of helping our teachers to identify and understand and empathize and so on.
Do you find that there is any kind of conflict with the students? For example, Siobhan described them as being at the appropriate level, and those who are facing the frustration. Do you find that there's any kind of conflict there?
Sometimes there are. And what I tell you is when we have, for instance, a headline like we had yesterday, not blaming anyone or anything, right? You find that there are some students now who are being teased. So they are grade 7 students, right? And so they are being classified because they're now put in a box. And so the other students are saying, can you read this and so on. And it can become something that causes conflict. So now we have to now manage that, right? Because something that was really to be done relating to special education and the need for us to raise the level of special education became a sensational article, and it really has not helped those students who are struggling and want to do well, right? And so conflict can occur.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you brought up the matter of special education, Reverend Ellis. Do you have the ability, or to what extent have you been able to disaggregate what is a genuine behavioral concern, an academic concern, versus what is a special needs concern?
The truth of the matter is, most of the time we use common sense, gut feeling, and what God has given to us, because we do not have the training to properly diagnose. And when we do ask for assessments to be done, it is prohibitive because of the cost in some instances. In other instances, the time for the government institutions is very long. And you can imagine that if every school is sending students to these government institutions, the line is going to be long. And unfortunately, there are still some parents who do not see it necessary to spend $40,000 on a student doing an assessment. right? They don't see it as necessary. And so it becomes a problem. So we have to now do the reading, and we have to use our gut feeling. We have to use the instincts that God has given to us to determine whether this is a genuine learning deficiency or it could be some other underlying issue that this child is facing.
I respect the faith, Reverend, but you do accept that is perhaps not the best way to approach this matter.
Absolutely. I'm not saying it is. But what is the converse? What do you do then when you are not trained to properly diagnose a situation of this nature? And you say to the parents, we would love for you to do an assessment of your child so that we are better able to direct what needs to be done. Maybe this is not even the institution for this child. This child needs an institution with a smaller class setting, a smaller class size. Right? And the parent says, well, sir, I'm not money, I can't do that, Right? You said, okay, you can use this government facility, and they get an appointment that is a year from the date that you have said. What is the converse that you do as a principal? You have to rely on your instincts.
Yes.
You have to rely on what you already know. You have to read and to see how can you best do those things that you have read. But it's not a proper diagnosis. I will agree with that.
Yeah. You hinted at the parents and the financial constraints that some of them face. What about the larger stakeholder group around the school, whether it be church, community, businesses maybe? What kind of support are you getting from your other stakeholders?
Well, a lot of them have tried. And one of the things that I have noted since the article came out yesterday, I've received several persons coming in to say, hey, we want to see what we can do. I have, for instance, I got a call from the management at Dairy Industries today to say, let's meet and tell me what we can do, to provide the possible means and so on. So when we have those conversations now, we can say, okay, we would like to have these groups of students tested. Maybe if we do it as a group, it would be a smaller fee and so on. So those are some of the things that are coming out now, right? But before this, we would always be writing, we would always be asking, but persons would tell us our budget does not allow for this at this moment. Maybe next year we will try, and so on and so forth. But this article and all of what is happening around it now has caused persons to say, hey, maybe I need to do something that will help this school to move along, because these children are going to be our future, drivers and farmers and teachers and lawyers and doctors and so on, And so we have to take care of them at this level now.
And ultimately, you brought attention to this issue, and I can sense that you are an individual who moves and acts with a purpose when it comes to matters of education. So what do you believe is now the ultimate goal in terms of these challenges being addressed, and to what extent does it fall on the parents versus the government versus the wider society?
Now, one of the things I want us to note, because there will be the feeling that the Ministry of Education has done nothing or is not doing enough. And I can tell you, no matter what they do, it will still not be enough. But I want to put it on record that it is not that the ministry has done nothing, because at the Pembroke Hall High School, we have had several things through the ministry to help to cauterize this thing, right? This issue that we're having, we have the one-on-one platform that we use. We have the SWP base and a number of other things, right? But what I would love to see happen is our parents, first of all, recognizing that there is a problem. There are many parents called denial. It's almost as though they don't want to hear that their child is at this level and needs this kind of intervention. Last year, we had what we call a mentorship program, right? We had not what we call, we had a mentorship program for our grade 7 students, where we asked that the students remain behind for 1 hour after school. And we use this 1 hour to help to change behavior and to help them to instill certain characters and characteristics and so on. And it was pulling teeth to get these parents to buy into it, right? Because a lot of them believe that their children are okay. So the parents, first of all, have to come to the point where they recognize that, hey, there is a challenge, right? We have had so many meetings at Pembroke Hall with our parents. They don't come to the meetings. We say, okay, let's keep a breakfast meeting. Maybe people will come because we offer breakfast. So we cook breakfast and we have a spread and we have a nice meeting in an air-conditioned facility and 20 people come, right? So we are saying that the parents have to recognize that they are an important part of the equation. So it cannot be left to the teachers. It cannot be left to the ministry. It cannot be left to corporate Jamaica. They, the parents, have to take charge of this thing and determine that my child needs this help and I will move towards it.
Principal Claude Ellis, thank you so much for your time and for your service. I can't imagine how difficult it must be. But keep up the good work, sir.
Thank you.